It was our first year in to being up in Alaska. It was really after 1 year in being up in Alaska is when we had some things that happened with a business partner, and we just weren't equally yoked, and all of that was coming out, and we really had to make a hard decision to either stay or leave the businesses. And it really became just morals, integrity, relationships were on the line, and we knew at that time God was calling us to step away. So we ended up stepping away from those 3 businesses.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Biblical Money. I'm your host, Rabbi Rami Goldberg, and I am here with Rick and Crystal Rumer, who are currently living in Texas, but they did that via Alaska. So looking forward to hearing a bit of that and going from ministry into real estate, and looking forward to hearing your story. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Wonderful. So give us a little bit of background. I guess born and raised. I don't think you guys are originally Eskimoan, but you somehow made your way out to Alaska. How'd you guys get out to Alaska? What was kind of the lead up to that?
Yeah, born and raised in Texas. Her in Central Texas, me a little bit North Texas. We met down in Houston. We're married down there and lived there for about 10, 12 years. 2015, we had just finished an adoption of our daughter and really just wanted a summer to grow closer as a family. And we took an epic road trip and drove from Houston, Texas to Alaska. Ended up in a small little town of Cooper Landing, Alaska. It's south of Anchorage. There's a lot of fishing there. It's beautiful, beautiful mountains, beautiful river there. And that's originally what got us up there is an epic road trip. The short version, we'll go into a little bit more here. We just never came back from that road trip.
Yeah.
At least not for an extended period of time.
We had some businesses at the time, different businesses, and we really took a sabbatical for that summer to just get away, rethink things. We had something going on with our business partner, so we looked at it as an opportunity. We went out to Alaska to just go on this epic road trip, draw closer as a family, and ended up not coming back.
Yeah, too often we go through life and we don't take those stop moments and those moments to really sit back and reflect. Oh, what am I doing here? And so it sounds like you guys definitely got that in spades with this trip. So you decided to stay. I mean, you had a business here, but what business were you in initially?
It grew out of a real estate business. I had an oil field housing facility down in South Texas. So some people refer to them as man camps, but a place for oil field workers to stay as they're drilling wells, where there's not a lot of infrastructure, not a lot of hotels. So we had that. And I had a couple of other startups that I was involved in, and as long as I had a laptop and a cell phone, I could facilitate business for the most part. And that's really what we were up to is running that man camp. And once again, that grew out of we had started flipping homes and owner financing homes and things like that in the local Texas market, specifically in Houston. But it kind of morphed into providing housing in a different way.
Yeah, he ended up having a business over in the Seychelles as well, and then in the Indian Ocean, and then another startup. But we had those 3 businesses all with the same business partner. And so we had landed up in Alaska, and after that first summer we were up there, we decided, we just felt this calling to stay. And we really didn't know why at the time. But it was our first year in to being up in Alaska. It was really after 1 year in being up in Alaska is when we had some things that happened with a business partner, and we just weren't equally yoked, and all of that was coming out, and we really had to make a hard decision to either stay or leave the businesses. And it really became just morals, integrity, relationships were on the line. And we knew at that time God was calling us to step away. So we ended up stepping away from those 3 businesses. And we then were up in Alaska going, what do we do? Now we're up here in Alaska. We've left our businesses. I mean, it's a mess. We don't know many people, and we're crying out, just going, what next? And really what opened the door was we had adopted our daughter, and her mother were sex trafficked. And we got her the day she was rescued. And so we ended up opening a place of refuge. That was back in Texas. But then in Alaska, we just really felt this pull to build a place of refuge for women and children that have been sex trafficked. And we also partnered with another nonprofit that we would do the outreach and help on the rescue side with FBI, local law enforcement. And so he led on the men's side, on the demand side, that part of the nonprofit. And then we would lead the women's outreach. And then we were building a place all at the same time as well.
I mean, I grew up in a very sheltered Jewish, kind of upper middle class environment. And this was not something that ever come across. How big of a problem is this within the United States? I mean, you hear about these things more in Africa and those types of places. But how big of an issue is this in the U.S.?
I would say it's a significant it's a significant issue. Now in the last 10 years, there's been a lot of change and a lot of awareness created. But prior to that, 10 years ago, not a lot of people would admit that there is some kind of sex trafficking going on. Now, you could have a conversation with somebody and say, do you think prostitution happens in this town? And people would probably say yes, but that has nothing to do in a lot of people's mind. That has nothing to do with sex trafficking. It turns out they're very interrelated. And, but you follow the money when you want to look at where sex trafficking is happening. A lot of times it's following the money. The United States, just you asked geographically or the United States specifically, it's a wealthy country, generally compared to the rest of the world. And people have money, and unfortunately, some people have an appetite for that. And therefore, we've experienced a lot of people brought here from other countries, women specifically brought here from other countries that maybe didn't speak English, didn't know where they were, they didn't know what city they were in, and they're moved around. And I guess I'm kind of going off on a little tangent, but it's happening all around us. It's happening in many small towns that no one would ever suspect that. And especially in the larger markets, here in the United States, Houston at least used to, I'm not quite sure where they're at now, but they used to lead the nation in trafficking because of they're centrally located geographically. They have close proximity to Mexico. They're a major port city. There's infrastructure and railroads and highways that go in every direction. Once again, very international and big business. And there's a lot of money, whether it be oil or other things there in the Houston market. A lot of sports, a lot going on there.
So definitely much more than we like to give kind of credit. And did you approach this from like a religious, from a God-centric perspective, or was this really just come and, we'll house and feed you? Was this, did you feel it as a calling, and was that something that, you kind of took your faith and brought it to what you're doing?
Yeah, it absolutely became a calling for us and more God-centric. It became our foundation with the nonprofit, because what we were dealing with was such darkness and evil. It's really hard to do that out of your own strength and out of your own might. And to see that replayed over and over and over, and just hearing the horrific stories that we would hear in these testimonies. But there was such beauty that also came out of just these horrible situations when they would come in, when they would feel a place of rest, safety, peace, start to get that healing and work that process out. A lot of times we would work with the women and their children, and it really bringing them back to the basics, foundationally too, whether that was with God and their focus with Him, as well as just the basics of life, how to cook, how to take care of yourself, jobs, things like that. The basic things that you and I take for granted, they had to relearn that over and over. So that became our focus. And what was really cool is, as a family, when we left to go to Alaska, it was that year that we started really focusing on Shabbat. And we got to bring that in as well with the nonprofit, because that became our time of rest, and that became our time of grounding and getting closer to as a family.
How do you give and not slow down and rest and get filled up before going out and giving some more? And just to circle back to your original question, whether it was God-centric or not, whether you're looking directly through the Torah or whether you're looking through the New Testament, this is literally on our hearts to take care of women. Widows and orphans, his children, those that no one else is going to fight for, those that no one else is looking out for. That's what we felt called to do, is to take care of his children.
Yeah. So, for many people, it's like, okay, I work in a business, but I really want to give back. You guys have that. You have your business, and you obviously understand entrepreneurship and everything that goes into that. And then you go into ministry, and it's like, okay, that's kind of the end point. But then you come back to business. So what's what happens that and for any person, I guess, if you hear one story, let alone hundreds of stories, it could break you. But I don't think it was coming from a broken place. I think so. Why did you now come back to Texas and decide, okay, the time has come to return to the heat?
Well, we're clearly giving you an abridged version, right? We only have so much time to tell our story. But we came back.
Well, everyone's gonna have to buy the bestseller when that comes out.
Right.
So that's what we're teeing you up for that,
Right.
For the
COVID slowed a lot of things down, especially with the nonprofit that we were working with. We were, in churches, we were raising funds, we were speaking, and we were working with law enforcement and FBI. A lot of that slowed down during that time period. But that allowed us to continue to work on our acreage that we had up in Alaska, that we were specifically building out for those that that the Lord brought to our door. And I guess what I'm getting at is we had a few deaths in the family back here in Texas. What I was trying to say is the abbreviated version that we started is we went up to Alaska and stayed. Well, that caused ripples, obviously, in our work, in our families, in our extended families, and we left in such a I would say quick and rash manner that when there's crisis in the family, we also felt called to be the ones that responded, because we had made these decisions. And we made several trips back home, and I have a stepfather who's now in memory care in a care facility. I have a mother now that's living on her own and has not lived on her own since she was 19 years old. She's never had an empty house. Her mother was diagnosed with cancer and has had a number of surgeries now. I think 3, maybe 4 surgeries. And
your dad passed.
My biological father passed.
Close relatives passed.
and another. And it's just, we're in the time of the season. We're in a season where we could go and we could take on mission, and we could have this, quite honestly, a lot of it was an adventure with our family. And at the same time, there's another season, and it was as if the leaves began to fall and it was time to come back and make a change. So that's really what brought us back to Texas.
And we jumped back into what we knew in business, and just doors opened and ran with that.
Yeah, so you're doing some interesting things with it within business. I know we've had a longer conversation, and as far as the pitch. So tell me a little bit about the real estate that you've now jumped into, a little bit different than kind of your man cave housing, like that you were doing beforehand, but helping people get into houses.
Yeah. A little bit of our backstory is I used to work for JP Morgan Chase. We had a couple of rental properties at the time, just between the two of us. And we liked that. We liked the idea of real estate. We saw the vision for it. I went through the housing crunch, and coming out of that, I saw an opportunity. I really didn't like making all of this money for the bank and for the shareholders, and for, anyways, I just knew that we could do something on our own. And so I came home one day and I said, hey, let's get into real estate. That was 2010. Let's make this move full time. And a couple of doors opened, and I stepped away, and we began buying those foreclosures off of the bankrolls that were existing in 2009-ish. And we started flipping homes. We started buying them, putting money into them, and turn around and rehabbing them, selling them again, doing it over again, doing a hustle. And we got into owner financing, which is just holding the note and financing somebody that may not qualify from a bank, but still has obviously the desire to buy a home, but the means to repay, but it's for one reason or another may not be bankable. And so we had a love for that. There's a lot of perks that rentals, you have calls in the middle of the night when somebody has a leaky toilet or when something goes wrong at a rental property. But when you own or finance something, somebody takes ownership of it. And
yeah, we always say no one's calling the bank in the middle of August when their AC goes out. You still have to pay the mortgage. So for us, we like that. People took ownership of the homes, which then led us to doing that. We still do that with single family, and then with land, where we buy large parcels of land. There's a lot in Texas, and then we get to subdivide it. And same thing, offer owner financing and be the bank for the buyer.
And when we do that, we originate these notes, the paper that backs up that transaction, that loan. And so we take these notes, and just like any big bank would create a mortgage, and 6 months later they sell that to somebody else. If you've ever had a mortgage and gotten a letter in the mail that said you no longer pay Bank of the Southwest, you now pay Bank of America or something of that effect, they've sold your note. We do the same thing. After we originate that note, we sell those notes to other investors, people like yourselves, various professionals, attorneys, doctors that really they want to participate in real estate, but may not have the time or the wherewithal to do it. And so they can buy these notes and they pay monthly cash flow. They end up being the bank or the lender, and they have all the rights and all the safety and security that a bank does in a loan transaction. And it creates that monthly passive cash flow.
I'm curious. Banks are unbelievable organizations and institutions because they really can help people do a lot of great things. There are at times they can be inflexible, and a person comes on hard times, they're the first one to say, give me my money. So how do you kind of balance that where you want to be, kind of magnanimous? We talked about taking care of the widow, the orphan,
right,
on the one hand, and on the other hand, listen, you got to run a business. You don't run a business, then you're finished. So and have you had situations where maybe you've turned around and you said, you know what, you could take this month and add it to the end of the contract. So have you had those types of situations?
We actually just recently had a situation where we had a gentleman. He was having a rough day. We don't know the whole history of it, but apparently he ended up getting stabbed. And then right after that, he ended up driving to the hospital and got into a really bad car accident. He ended up paying in advance.
So he was injured and could not work, but he called us up and made the next payment. This was in June, I think, just recently. He made his June payment ahead of time and then said, hey, I've had this accident. I can't work for the next 3 or 4 months. Can we talk about this? How can I, and it's the same thing that you just said. We can take some payments off of these right now. Let's put it on the end. Life happens to people, but these are generally good folks, right? Nobody wants to lose their home. Nobody wants to lose their property. And so he came to us and said, can we have a little favor here, a little grace? Yeah, would love it. I love the idea of that. But you've got to balance that with business, just like you said. I'm glad you brought that up. There's a couple of things that we do on the front end to separate ourselves from just a regular mom and pop couple of people owner financing anybody and everybody. We do go through a third party. It's called an RMLO. It's a residential mortgage loan originator. But we're going to hire a third party to do the due diligence, the vetting, the underwriting of that client to at least a standard where we know that they have the means to repay that loan. They have the ability to do it. They have the income, they have the previous work history, the money in the bank, et cetera, so that we can reduce our risk. But at the same time, we have to have some kind of protocol, some kind of business operation that is repeatable so that we don't find ourselves always being in a situation where we've got to forgive people's debt. So it's a balance.
Yeah, no, it is. I think that's one of the big challenges of a business is you always want to look out for that person. I had, a number of occasions where people were like, okay, in my business where they would ask, okay, can we get an advance? Well, I also had to weigh that with, if I give the person the advance, well, what are they going to do when the 15th of the month rolls around? And now I'm only giving them, 7 days worth of wages. So I always try to look at the long-term situation and not just kind of the short-term situation. And so you guys keep Shabbat on a weekly basis. And what does your Shabbat look like on a, is it, do you start with the candles? What's your Shabbat look like on a weekly basis?
I love this question. I love it. Can I just jump out here? We were clearly not raised in synagogue. We just read what the scripture said and tried to do our best. And that's kind of where we started from. We visited different congregations. We visited lots of folks. What it looked like when we got up to Alaska was a home fellowship. We'd have 12 to 15 folks come over on a Friday. We, probably around Friday afternoon, late morning.
Well, the sun doesn't set in Alaska, so that's a different.
We have a very funny story about that, by the way. But we'd shut things down and we'd start cleaning house and getting ready and making challah and doing everything that we knew to do to prepare for tomorrow and the next day. But we'd have friends in a small fellowship come over, and yes,
we'd start out with the candles.
We'd start out with candles. We'd have challah. We'd sing. We'd pray. And ultimately, it turned into, what's the Lord giving you this week? What did you read? Where is He speaking to you? And and conversations and ministry would begin happening around the table. And it was a beautiful thing because it was kind of organic. And once again, we didn't have anyone to show us what to do, but we were doing our best. And we felt like the Lord was honoring the fact that we were just doing our best, what we knew. Now coming back to Dallas, Fort Worth, the Metroplex here,
we've got a lot of connections and options of synagogues and congregations too that are available that we didn't have available in Alaska.
Yeah. But we searched. We visited some folks down in Houston, oddly enough, for a Passover.
Yeah.
And they said, "Hey, do you know so and so in Dallas?" And we were like, "No, we don't know them." And they're like, "You need to get plugged in with them." And lo and behold, we went into a fellowship there. There's a Holocaust survivor that comes usually at least at most nights, most Friday nights, and it's felt more like a home fellowship to us because there's probably 30 folks that come together.
30, 40 of us.
And once again, same thing. We
open up with candles.
We enjoy some challah. We have some wine and we worship, and we generally have in that particular format, we have a teacher that comes in, various teachers on weekly basis to reveal some of the scriptures to us.
Or rabbi comes and shares and reads the Torah as well. And then Saturdays is usually our time as a family that we're doing things at home, and our family tradition and our things that we are as a family just drawing closer to each other and slowing down, which is a sweet time. We definitely need it, and just being able to have that peace, I think, is so important over the weekend.
Yeah, the decompressing. So actually, one of the commentaries points out that that people think that God created for only 6 days. So he actually created for 7 days. And on the seventh day, he created rest,
Right.
that concept of stopping, of waiting. So you said you have a funny story. I'd love to hear the funny story that happened with sunset in Alaska.
We were in a small town called Cooper Landing in Alaska. I think it's got about 350 residents. But once again, during the summer, the salmon run up the river. Everyone comes to fish. It's sunny.
Big tourist town.
Sunny all night long. And we walk into a convenience store, and my son and I are eating ice cream. And both my son and I, we're pretty quiet. We're relatively reserved. And we see a gentleman wearing a kippah with tzitzit, and he comes in and he's asking a question. I can't remember. And this happened to be Friday afternoon. And I'm elbowing my son saying, "Hey, tell him Shabbat Shalom. Tell him Shabbat Shalom." And he goes, "No, you tell him Shabbat Shalom." And neither one of us did. Crystal walks in the door, the front of the convenience store. She looks at him. She looks at us. She looks at him, and she goes, "Shabbat Shalom." And he turned around and he goes, "You know Shabbat?" And then
we connected with them. Come to find out, we were staying at the same place. We were both camping at that time at the same campsite with our trailers, our RVs, and they invited us to come over, and they were going, "How do you do Shabbat with the sun not setting?" They were just really confused because they were going, how do you do this every time? Because we had conversation going, yeah, we do Shabbat as well. And then they invited us over and read the scriptures. One of them was a cantor. Another one worked for Netanyahu. And it was just a beautiful time. They shared food with us. And but they were just really baffled going, "The sun never sets here in the summertime. How does this even work?"
Yeah, they're like, "So when do you start? When do you officially start?" And we just kind of we just do the best we can, when the evening comes, that's when we start.
there was a whole discussion. There's actually been a number of astronauts, Jewish astronauts, both from the United States and from, we had one from Israel. And when Ilan Ramon, who was the Israeli, was on, I forget which flight it was, but that got, it was just, ended up not making it back. But it was a whole question because he wanted to keep Shabbat. What time do you keep it in space? And there was and there's another astronaut who actually holds the record for spinning the dreidel on Hanukkah because he was up there and he brought it, and obviously there's no friction, and so spun for hours exactly. But yeah, it definitely is fascinating. One other story which I love, where there was a Chabad. Are you guys familiar with Chabad? This rabbi who was out far in the far west of Alaska, and there was a little girl who came from a Jewish family, and he turned to her and said, "I just want you to know, you and your mother are the last two people in the world to light the candles when Shabbat begins." Meaning, so you're all the way far out, and the entire world is waiting for the light of that Shabbat to happen. So, you kind of get chills when you're, not just because it's Alaska that you get chills, but I'm saying from that. So, so a lot of times, kind of business sometimes does conflict with our faith. Have you found that? Have you found that you have areas where you're like, okay, I got to make a decision, and your faith guided you towards making a decision, which maybe you didn't make as much money as you wanted, but have you had kind of experiences in that regard?
I think several things. Us stepping away from our previous businesses was a big moment there, and just trusting he was going to provide and take care of us. But then obviously in the moment, we're so confused. Why is this happening? What's going on? But then the big picture was, oh, well, doors open, where we ended up starting the nonprofit and became a beautiful thing. But in the moment, you're just going, I don't know. This looks crazy. And moving back here to Texas and then starting business all over, the quickest, easiest thing was we're educated. We had lots of experiences in different areas, in the banking and the finance industry and all of that. So sure, we can go get jobs, but we really felt a calling to start the real estate business again, start that over again. And I feel like just over and over in the process with adopting our daughter, moving out to Alaska, there's just been those pivotal moments where it looks really crazy or impossible, but he just made a way where there just seemed like there was no way, or there was this huge mountain in front of us and we couldn't see what was on the other side of it.
I've never been to Israel, never been to Jerusalem. I don't know how, still to this day, how that group, that society, how you keep Shabbat. I don't know what it looks like. But for us, it was, putting the Lord first and slowing down and resting. And I think in business, man, Friday afternoon, emails and phone calls, and they continue into Saturday. They just keep coming. And I think for a while there was a desire to pick up the phone and to call somebody or to fire off. It's only a quick email. I can send this really quick. I think there's a desire to want to continue business. If I don't do this, then the deal's not going to go through. But I think what we found out is the deal will still go through, and they'll respond, or you can respond later, and life goes on. And he gives us, he's given us great favor in business when we do slow down and put him first.
Yeah, when we honor him, and he multiplies that beyond what we can. And I believe it's in the obedience.
Yeah, it definitely, one of my favorite things is we put away our phones. There's no phones or computers or anything, meaning I don't know what's happening. And you know what? And sometimes that's challenging because like, okay, there's like a war going on and like, do we need to know? But you know what? I don't know. And you're subservient and obedient. And it's just like, just chill, because that's it. We're not, where are we running to? You know, part of the idea on Shabbat is we don't do creative activities. Not a matter of like working because I'm carrying big things, but I'm not allowed to write on Shabbat. Writing's not not working. No, it's a creative activity. And this is when I can really enjoy the moments that I have. I can enjoy my family. I can enjoy my community. And that, especially in today's super connected world, I can't enjoy the people that are right in front of me because somebody else on the other side, the other side of the city wants to, buy a house or whatever they want to do. So I think that's so much, so much a part of what we're doing. But we'll certainly have to get you here and have you experience a Shabbat in Jerusalem at some point. That definitely get that on the bucket list. So we'll start to wrap up, and I guess just what do you guys see as kind of the next thing? Okay, you got real estate, and there's I know all sorts of discussions about interest rates going up, going down. What's going to be? Is that long term, or is there something else you guys have an idea that's like, okay, no, we're going to go ahead and do something unique or different?
There's a couple of things that I want to say is we're largely in a land business, and we say God's not making any more land. There's only so much of it. There's always going to be another house, another home, and another commercial building built, but there's not going to be raw land that is vacant, empty, in the middle of nowhere. I say in the middle of nowhere, set out a little bit. It's going away. So I see that happening. Specifically with you mentioned interest rates, you mentioned what's going to happen with the economy. I think I just spoke about land, how much I love land, but there's always going to be a need for affordable housing. There's those that can't qualify and can't, once again, aren't bankable, but they still have a need and a desire to be, to have home ownership. And I believe that there's a niche there for us.
It doesn't matter on interest rates for us on that, because our rates stay pretty much the same whether interest rates are high or low.
Whether we're financing land or financing homes, we do it at 10%. And at 10%. I was going to say we do some longer terms and shorter terms, but we're doing it at 10%. When we turn around and sell that paper I mentioned, when we sell that note, specifically with our business model and doing that, a decreasing interest rate is a great time for us to be selling that paper. They work similarly to bonds. When the interest rate is going down, you want to be holding higher interest rate paper, higher interest rate notes. And as the interest rates go down, those go away, which makes the ones that we hold a little bit more desirable. So it's a good opportunity for people to lock in a 10%, 11%, 12% interest rate now. And then as interest rates come down, they're going to be holding an asset that's going to pay for the next 15 or 30 years that is at a higher interest rate, where you can't just go and invest that money now that the interest rates have come down, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely makes sense. And that's certainly people who are looking for a good investment. It's certainly something to talk to. People want to get in touch with you. What's the best way to do it? Obviously, you could always reach out to me and I'll put people in touch, but is there an email that you want to put out there?
I like phone calls. I like getting to know people. I'm more than happy to put out my phone number, area code 817-845-6764. Yes, I have an email as well, but we may be doing some rebranding in the next year or so, and so that's why I hesitate on that.
But we're both on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah.
So LinkedIn is always good, or just reach out to you and you can get us.
And if you can put those on this, that'd be great.
Wonderful. Rick, Crystal, thank you guys so much for taking the time, and God should continue to bless all of your handiwork and everything that you're doing as far as land development and helping people be able to afford homes. I really appreciate you taking the time, and God bless that everything that you guys are doing.
Well, thank you. Thanks
Appreciate
for having
it, Rami.
us.
Thank you so much.